Hey guys, welcome to Cozy Talks Live. We've got a big show tonight. It is day 2 of Limb Loss Awareness Month. So it's Amputee Awareness Month for the month of April. So this month we're doing a lot on the Cozy Talks show. It's like I brought my extra big Cozy Talks Cool Kids mug tonight this evening. So let's go say hello to some of the folks who are on board. We've got Chuck here from Wyoming with his iced tea in the glass. We got G.I. Jane loving the hip swaying music. I love it too, G.I. Jane. We got Emily coming in from Central PA with her iced cherry chai. Emily, I don't think I've ever seen you have the same drink twice on the show, and like the combinations and flavors get even more interesting. We got Rob in Georgia with more coffee in the cup. Cheers to you, Rob. Emily says she did adaptive yoga tonight at her in-person amputee support group and really enjoyed it. Awesome. We've got Tom coming in from Maryland. Let's see. We got Van Gregory coming in from Texas. We got my girl Lynette coming in from Miami, comadre. And let's see, watching on YouTube. Okay, so yep. Okay, hopefully you guys are getting the audio and it's coming in better. Guys, just so you know, I am broadcasting to YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. So if you're having trouble buffering the audio on one, I know sometimes Facebook can get a little cranky. You can catch me on the YouTube channel, which seems to be a little bit more friendly for folks. We've got Marianne on board. She has a question for me. Do I think it's better to have a pin lock above me or suction? Well, girl, we're going to get to that question, Marianne. And if I forget to answer that question, I want you to repost it again. We got Pastor Dave on board, and G.I. Jane is drinking Arizona drinking coffee. Let's see. Bill is coming in with water in the jug. We got Scott coming in with his new RevoFit socket, which is awesome. And I love the design. He's got his orange shirt on, ready for Limb Loss Awareness Month. And we got Marty coming in with his Texas Tea Tuesday. Oh, man. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, let's see. We got a couple people who were in on the Instagram channel. We got Pam on board, Francis, and I think Tom was also there on board as well. Francis says, I like the pin lock. Yeah, okay, well, you know what? Let's talk about it because actually the headline question for this evening, hey there, Jerry Ann. She's got her white chocolate mocha coffee. Hey, Tom. Tom, that was a funny story you sent me today. Okay, so, actually, I probably should introduce myself because I do know we have a lot of new people on board this evening. So for those of you joining me for the first time, welcome. My name is Cozy Belloso. I'm a physical therapist here in Tampa, Florida. I've been a PT for over 23 years, and my passion is working with the limb loss community. It is Limb Loss Awareness Month, and you can see social media just exploding in like orange everywhere. So it's really cool to see this. So usually for those of you who are new to watching the show, I broadcast every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. So like tonight, right? However, for the month of April, I will be going live every night. Dear heavens. Every night at 8:30 p.m., I will go live and I will answer one question. For those of you who've been watching my show, you know that's going to be hard for me just to keep it to one question. And you guys have been wonderful. I sent out a text call to ask for you guys for your questions. I got 2 pages, single-spaced of questions. So we've got a long night tonight, and I'm very excited about this. So let's jump on to the headliner question that I teased with. And it relates to the suspension systems. What's going on, my motivated one-legger? All right, we got Cindy Price coming in from North Carolina with water in her cup. All right, so this question came in and it said, what does a vacuum prosthetic, what is it supposed to feel like? I have constant issues now that I have to wear a sock. Is it supposed to be firm like a leg or have movement within the socket? I've been in one for 4 years and I still cannot walk without a walker as my balance is horrible. I'm getting ready to try an EthroCare Air Sock. My prosthetic person got one for free and I'm going to be the test person. Hey, Sean, what's going on, man? My pleasure, Sean. My pleasure. Good to have you here. 8:30 is past your bedtime, G.I. Jane. It's past my bedtime right now, and that's why I've got a little cup of Joe right here. Okay, so guys, when it comes to suspension, so let's just kind of go back a little bit. Suspension is how your prosthetic leg is held on to your body, held onto your residual limb. Sometimes people will confuse suspension with the shape of the socket, okay? Now, to muddy the waters a little bit more, sometimes the shape of the socket will help contribute to suspension, okay? But when I'm talking about suspension, usually I'm talking about a method that is being implemented in your socket to hold it onto your residual limb. And there are numerous methods, okay? We have simple methods like the pin lock system where you click into the socket. You have a lanyard strap system where you pull yourself in using that lanyard strap. You have things that are a little more sophisticated, like the suction system. Okay, so basically when you push your leg in, it creates a negative pressure because the air gets pushed out of a valve. So it creates like a negative pressure, kind of like I like to tell people when you put your fingers in the Chinese finger puppet and they get stuck, that's kind of sort of how that works, right? So when you're talking about elevated vacuum or vacuum assisted system, vacuum assisted suspension, you might see it used as VAS, that acronym. Okay. It's basically adding a mechanical vacuum to a suction suspension system. Okay. So it's taking suction suspension and taking it to another level. Okay. So really, it basically sucks the air out of your socket to create negative pressure. Okay. And in sucking the air out of the socket, it also kind of like makes your limb like balloon up against the walls of the socket. Okay. So the purpose of this is to give it a much more intimate and snug fit. Okay. That's kind of the reason why some prosthetists will choose to put their patients in a suction or elevated vacuum system. Okay. And like everything in prosthetics world, hey Grant, what's up, man? As everything in the prosthetics world, there's pros and cons to each, right? So with the elevated vacuum system, the pro is that it basically really provides the most intimate fit of a socket and the most close fit socket. People who love their vacuum system, they feel like it's just really, truly connected with their leg and their limb, okay? So that's one of the big ones. Another good thing is because it's like constant pressure with elevated vacuum, the fluid in your limb stays more constant. So it doesn't fluctuate in volume, or theoretically, it's not supposed to fluctuate in volume as much during the day. Okay. Now, drawbacks. It's another thing added to your prosthesis, right? So it's another thing that potentially could go wrong, needs maintenance, could get screwed up somehow. It's just something else you're adding to the socket, right? In some cases, people have trouble keeping the seal. Okay. So with some of these elevated vacuum systems, you have to wear an external sleeve to really get that to get the seal in, right? And that can be kind of a pain in the neck, right? Because you're having to wear this external sleeve. It can be hot, and here in Florida, it can be really hot. It can be a little bit bulky. If you get a little tear in it, then you're going to lose the suction and you're going to lose the pressure, and it breaks the seal, right? Limb fluid. Yes, John. So what I mean by limb fluid is just all the normal circulation that you have in your limb. Limb fluid is I should probably say the word circulation. It's a little more posh sounding, right? Hey there, Carolyn. Oh, it's good to see you. So Bill says he loves his elevated vacuum, but on the other hand, Sean, I know has been having some issues with it and saying, some issues there. So one of the things that kind of is like, sometimes when I have a patient who has elevated vacuum or a vacuum or just a suction suspension, and they do start changing limb volume and they start shrinking and we start having to add socks to it, that can kind of make it a little more tricky to get a good fit. Okay. But this particular individual who sent me the question saying, that they're not sure how it's supposed to feel. It's supposed to feel like a really snug fit. Okay. It shouldn't feel strangled. And then they were saying, are they supposed to have movement within the socket? That's a definite no. In any socket, I don't care what kind of suspension you're having, you're not supposed to be able to move your limb in your socket. Okay. Moving limb in the socket means you're going to get friction and shearing and chafing and end up with the blister, which is what we talked about on last night's show. So guys, if you didn't get a chance to watch last night's show, give it a go. I talk about what happens when you get a blister, how to manage it, and then how to prevent them. So if you didn't get the chance, go watch the show from last night. It's a short, quick one. Okay. So getting back to this person's question, they say they've been in one for 4 years and they're still not able to walk without a walker, with the balance being horrible. Well, if your socket is not fitting well, okay, and you're not getting good contact with your socket, then yeah, you're going to kind of be all over the place, right? You're not going to feel connected to it. You're not going to get a good sense of proprioception, meaning you're not going to be able to feel where your leg is in space. And that's already tricky to learn when your socket is fitting well. So if your socket's not fitting well and you don't have good suspension, right, that will definitely contribute to having poor balance. Okay. It's not the only thing, right? There's a lot of things involved with improving balance and getting off a walker. Okay. In terms of this EthroCare Air Sock, I looked it up because I had never heard about it. And it looks like a sock that they use for certain braces. And it sounds like perhaps they're coming out with something for an amputee. I don't know. I don't know anything about it. All I know is based on what I'm hearing from this person, it sounds like they really need to go back to the drawing board with their prosthetist and have a conversation, and perhaps elevated vacuum might not necessarily be the best solution for them, or that the fit of the socket itself needs to be fit properly. Okay, and this is another key thing, and then we're going to move on. If your socket is not fit well, okay, I've occasionally seen this happen where a prosthetist might put elevated vacuum to kind of try to make it fit better. It's not going to work, guys. It's not going to work. Okay. It's like putting really good icing on a cake that tastes like crap. Okay. You take a bite of it, you're still going to taste the crappy cake. Okay. If it's a cruddy socket or a crappy socket and you put elevated vacuum into it, you're still going to have a crappy socket now with elevated vacuum. Okay. So again, you have to address the root cause of the problem. And the root cause might be that socket is just not made right, or it's not fitting properly anymore. Yes. Sean says, going to the gym has been an issue where I can't do certain exercises that I'm used to, and it's being depressing. Hey there, Harsh. No. And again, it just sounds like, Sean, you've not been having a good experience with your elevated vacuum, and you couldn't do your 5K. Oh man, that stinks. You couldn't do your run. Go back to your prosthetist. And guys, there's no shame. I know elevated vacuum is like the of suspension systems in prosthetic world. And yeah, it's more expensive. It's more sophisticated, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best solution. Okay. I've had just as many people say that they love their elevated vacuum and they have defended it ferociously, and they think everybody should have elevated vacuum because it works for them. And then I've had just as many people say, no, man, I don't need that. And I'm talking about people like Reggie Showers, my buddy Reggie Showers, who's been an amputee for over 40 years, has buku experience with all the different things and prosthetics, and he chooses not to use elevated vacuum. So it's not meant for everyone, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And if it's not working for you, it's okay to say that. It's okay to go back to your prosthetist and say, look, this is just not working. We need to either continue to troubleshoot and see if there's an underlying cause with the socket itself, or move on to something different, maybe just basic suction. Okay. I know a lot of people, I find that a lot more people are happier with basic suction than when they add the elevated vacuum. Okay. But again, talk to your prosthetist, have these conversations, continue to communicate. All right. Frances says she likes the pin lock. Yeah. And again, there's no one fit for everyone, truly. And I have my personal preferences of the suspension systems I like. And a lot of times some people, it just doesn't work for them. So it truly is a case-by-case basis right there. Robert says he's getting fitted for his first vacuum system next week. Let's see. Bill loves his. All right, let me just... Yes, Robert, fluid is swelling and shrinking. Yes, you're correct. When I'm talking about your limb, the limb is constantly changing. So the same way that when you wake up in the morning, sometimes your wedding ring might be a little bit tight, and then by the end of the day, it's a little bit looser. The rest of your body undergoes these changes all day. We're never the same, right? It's just when you become an amputee and you're wearing a prosthesis, you're going to be more sensitive to those changes. You're going to notice those changes a lot more because it's going to affect whether or not you can put your limb on or you can put your prosthesis on in the morning, right? So that's when you start to realize, wait a second, my limb is like puffier than it was last night. Like, what gives? And I've done lots of videos on that. Speaking of which, this April, I am going to be releasing, along with Click Medical, four videos on limb volume management. Okay. You guys got to keep your eyes peeled on social media, because I'm going to be releasing one of those reels, and it's going to say comment volume, and I'll send you the links to those free videos. It's like really kind of in-depth dive into limb volume, the whys, the whats, the hows, and how you can prevent it and manage it and all that good stuff. So keep your eyes peeled. Click Medical is doing some awesome stuff this month. Okay. Has anyone used a lock with a vacuum? Harsh, that's actually a really good question. That's a great question. I'm trying to think right now. If I have any prosthetists on board, I'd love to get your opinion on this. I don't believe I have ever seen anybody with a pin lock and vacuum. I'm going to go with no. But again, if there's any prosthetists on board or if any prosthetist jumps on board, guys, let's remind and we'll ask them that question. Hey there, Helen. Glad you could join in. We got Glenn on board as well. Yeah. And honestly, Sean, you're saying is if you're as active as you are, it's not for you. Honestly, Sean, I've seen active people who love elevated vacuum and people who are not as active who love vacuum. Like I really haven't seen like a rhyme or reason as to who succeeds more with elevated vacuum. I really just do think it boils down to personal preference about how it feels and then how the body, their body reacts to it. So Tom says he tried it, wasn't for him. Harsh says he chooses not to use it. Yeah, no. And if your weight is fluctuating, that will certainly cause issues there. Absolutely. Absolutely. So Mina says that she's a bilateral below the knee and she has an elevated vacuum system. Now, I will say I can imagine that for a bilateral, having an elevated vacuum system can really provide an advantage because obviously you're dealing with two prosthetic devices. So if you can be successful with elevated vacuum, I can only imagine that that's going to give you a much better connection with those prosthetic legs. So Helen says, I have pin lock and I have had suction system. So Bill says he's had pin, suction, pump, elevated vacuum was his choice. Excellent. And Mina says that she feels more secure with her elevated compared to a pin lock, which only felt attached at the distal end where this is surrounding. See, it's very interesting to hear that. So I hear folks like Mina say like the elevated vacuum, they feel like nice and secure. And then I have other people see, and I would think that the elevated would feel more secure, right? I'm with you, Mina. But I've had many of my patients that they want that pin lock. They want to hear the clicking in, and that's what they want. That's what makes them feel secure. And you're right, though. It has the downside sometimes to pin lock is that it can start that pistoning effect where it starts to pull on that distal end if it's not fit properly and donned properly. That's what I'm thinking, Robert. That's what I'm thinking. I was like, it's funny. I've never thought of that. Like, can you combine pin lock with vacuum? And I'm going to say the answer is no, because you have to have a closed system to provide that suction and negative pressure. And I'm thinking, I'm racking my brains right now. I don't believe I've ever seen anyone. But again, let's see if a prosthetist jumps on board tonight. We can tackle them with the question. So you could use two different systems. Yes, it's not to say that you can't combine. Sometimes you might see more than one type of suspension system in a particular leg or in a particular socket. And again, for me, and I think I many of the prosthetists that I've worked with kind of echo the same sentiment. The more simple you can keep a setup, the better. Right. So it's always best to kind of start out with a very simple system and then see how the person does. And as they acclimate to wearing a prosthesis and they become more active, then you add the bells and whistles that may be necessary to help them the prosthesis keep up with their activity and lifestyle. Okay. Likewise, if the person is someone who's not very active, they might need to have some of these bells and whistles to ensure stability and security. Okay. So again, it's kind of like, the first time you put these things on the leg, you're trying to guesstimate what the person's activity level is going to be, their lifestyle and everything like that. And then as they go along, right, you add things as needed. Okay. But it is one of those things for me, I always think the less is better. The less you have to put onto a prosthesis to make it work, the better it is for maintenance and everything like that. So, hey there, Anthony. Good evening. Hello, Stephen. So Grant says, I use my elevated suction when I'm cycling or hiking, things that make my volume change more than normal. Okay, Jerry Ann says, I am interested in the Click Medical whenever my wound heals. That's what I think I would like to try as a bilateral amputee. And Jerry Ann, next Wednesday, guys, I'm doing a show I'm actually doing 3 sponsored shows in a row. It's going to be an insane month in April. Like by the end of April, I'm going to be right. And then on top of that, I'm making a prom dress for my daughter by Saturday. So this whole room that I'm looking at right now, it's covered in pink tulle and glitter and pearls. Fun stuff. Crazy month. Anyways, next Wednesday, big show with Click Medical. We are going to be reviewing all of Click Medical. And we're actually going to be doing for also upper extremity amputees for our arm amputee folks, which I'm so excited because I very rarely get to talk to my arm amputee. So we're going to be talking about all the different ways that Click Medical can be used as an upper extremity amputee and lower extremity amputee. So Jerry Ann, that's going to be a good show for you to be a part of. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. Y'all are having some really, really great discussions here, and I love this. Love it, love it, love it. Ooh, we got a lot of people jumping in on Instagram. I just popped over. We got Sandy, we got Charles Taylor, Chuck Taylor coming in to follow. We got Melissa, and we've got Mola Lachelle. I love trying to read all of these Instagram handles. Sometimes I feel a little silly doing that, but that's okay. We're good. Let's see. Marianne says, I'm a BACA, a bilateral AK, and I've never had pin locks, anything but pin locks. I was just wondering if there's something better for me. So Marianne, again, if it depends, like, what are you hoping? What do you want to improve upon with your pin locks? Do you feel like your leg is not secure? Do you feel like your leg is not secure? In which case, do you want to start off with the suction? Keeping in mind, if you're using stubbies, I think the pin lock is probably the better system. Okay. If you're primarily using stubbies, I think, and again, this is something I want you to have this conversation with your prosthetist because they are laying eyes on you, right? Because I think it's just a simpler way of putting these legs on. Right. If you're talking about the full length legs and you feel like you're not very secure in your pin lock, then yes, I think it's worth having a conversation with your prosthetist and just saying, is suction, because that would be the kind of like the next step up, just to say, is suction something that would be viable for me to use? Okay. So Bill says, my issue with elevated vacuum was sleeve wear, hence the Sleeve Saver. And Bill, if you want to throw up your website for the Sleeve Saver, go ahead and throw that up in the comment section for folks to take a look at. It's a really interesting creation, we'll call it, right, Bill, that he created to help with the wear and tear of the external sleeves. So guys, go ahead and if he'd show Bill some love and check out his website. All right, let's see. Could I tell you about the Ertl procedure? Yes, I could tell you about the Ertl procedure. Okay, so the Ertl procedure was invented by a guy named Dr. Ertl, and I have it somewhere in my presentation that I'll be giving in a couple of weeks. And it was actually to help create a bony bridge. Okay, so basically in your typical below the knee amputation, surgeon makes the cut and they take the fibula, the outer bone, and they shave it and they kind of, work their magic on it and they make it a little bit shorter than the tibia. And then off you go. So technically, this fibula and the tibia are kind of, they're free floating. They're not attached to one another the way they used to be when the foot was there, right? So this gentleman, Dr. Ertl, he created a procedure whereby he makes a bony bridge. So they take a little bit of bone graft and they put a bridge between the two bones to connect them once and for all to prevent any kind of chopsticking type action, right? And then in doing so, once that heals, the person is able to bear weight at the end of that bony bridge. So it gives them an advantage when they are wearing their prosthesis, that they can put weight at the end of the prosthesis. If you do not have an Ertl procedure, you cannot put weight at the end of that prosthesis. That's actually a big, big no-no, right? Your weight is carried by the soft tissues, right? There is also a much lesser known procedure, Ertl procedure, for the above knee. And basically what they do there is they put like a bony end cap. So instead of leaving like the bone just chopped like that, they kind of put like a little cap, almost like a little mushroom cap at the end of the bone. Okay. I really haven't seen anyone with that particular one. I just, in theory, I know it exists. Okay. In terms of whether it's worth it or not, I've heard, and again, I've only spoken to a handful. I don't have any literature on this. This is just me, knowing people in the community who've had it. I've had my hair is a hot mess tonight. I've had just as many people say that, it's been great because they can put weight at the end of the prosthesis. And some people say they really didn't notice a difference. And, it doesn't seem like there was anything negative about the procedure. It's just whether or not it made a difference or not. And again, that's something I would like to learn more about and get a little bit caught up on that literature. Hey there, Andre. Good to see you, man. I hope Tatiana's on board as well. We got Jean coming in from California. All right, let's get to some of these questions. Y'all sent me a lot of questions, and I love it. All right. Ooh, here we go. This is a good one because this particular knee has been coming up a lot in conversation since they launched it about a year and a half ago. I can't remember. So this one says, thank you so much for the episode on the knee disarticulation level amputation. I have been a knee dysartic since 1988 due to an industrial accident. I do have my patella, and it has not caused me any issues. I found that to be very interesting. I currently have a first generation Alex, which was my first microprocessor knee. And before that, a hydraulic, and before that, a basic door type hinge. So if you think about it, this guy was an amputee in 1988 before we had microprocessor knees. So yeah, he was using the very basic single axis, a door hinge knee. That's the kind of knees that I started learning on when I became a therapist. He said I was 18 years old, married now. After going to a Proteor clinic, I'm thinking of switching to the Quattro because my Alex is due for a change. What are my thoughts on the Quattro versus the Alex? Okay, so the Alex, and again, I've given my talk on prosthetic knees a lot, and much like prosthetic feet, you need to think about prosthetic knees in terms of their function, right? How the movement is going to be controlled, right? There are some knees that are created to give you more stability. There are some knees that are created to give you more mobility. Okay. And you got to kind of take your lifestyle into account. Okay. A lot of times we get caught up on the really fun, sexy names that they give these knees and these feet. And it's kind of cool. You know, the Quattro, the Alex, the Soleus, the Maverick, all these kind of crazy names, right? But again, look at what's going on in the inner workings of the knee. And a lot of times you guys can watch my prosthetic feet 101 talk. I have the blog written up on my COSI Talks website. And that's actually, guys, I am going to write this down because it is a kind of a good one right there. Because I think, it's tied in together. And I do need to do one on knees. And I do need to do one. So guys, if you want to know everything you need to know about prosthetic feet and how to choose them and the classifications, go to my blog and you'll be able to print out a little cheat sheet there. When it comes to knees, okay, the Alex is a microprocessor knee. So it's got the computerized technology and it's going to sense the legs swinging in space. And it's also going to sense when you put weight into it, and it's going to adjust things accordingly. It does it for you. Compared to a non-microprocessor knee where you as the user, you're the one who has to have, really control what goes on with that knee. The Alex is also what we call a polycentric knee. So it has a lot of centers of rotation, 4 centers of rotation. It's kind of cool to look at. It's all like very geometric looking, and it's kind of cool when it bends, right? And it's actually a great knee. A polycentric knee in general is really great to use for someone who is a knee dysarticulation patient. Okay, if you guys remember from my talk a couple of weeks back where we talked a lot about knee dysartics, excuse me, our knee dysartic patients tend to have the advantage of having a long lever arm, right? Because they have their entire femur intact. Okay. Which means they're going to be functioning very well. They're going to be functioning almost like a below the knee amputee. Okay. So they can handle a little less stability of the knee and a little more mobility. And a polycentric knee is really great. It can be adjusted either way, right? A prosthetist can adjust the polycentric knee to be more stable or more mobile, depending on the alignment. Okay. So in general. And then the other good thing about the polycentric knee is it shortens. So when the person sits down and the knee bends, it makes it look like it's shortening. So it kind of keeps the knees looking even. So it's not like one knee is sticking out further than the other, which can be a problem sometimes with knee dysartic patients. Okay. The Quattro, okay, is the opposite. It is a single axis knee. So a knee can either be single axis or polycentric. It's a single axis knee. And in this case, and I had to call up my buddy Matt, he used to work for Proteor, so he was able to kind of give me the scoop on this a little bit better. It also has hydraulics. So it has the hydraulics to help control that knee. Okay. And it's also a microprocessor knee. Now, I forgot to check to see if the Alex has any hydraulic components in it. I'm going to take a wild stab and say it is, because most of our microprocessor knees nowadays, they have hydraulic components in them. So the biggest difference there between the Alex and the Quattro is that the Alex is polycentric, Quattro is single access. And again, there's a lot of like little, what I call the micro features, right? The little nuances that are different to every knee that every manufacturer puts in there. But that's the biggest difference right there. So for someone like yourself that you've used all the different kinds of knees, you're a very experienced amputee, it really will be how you feel. Now, the feedback that I've received from many of you in the community using the Quattro, those of you who are actually very active individuals, you've actually given me a lot of positive feedback about the Quattro, and it sounds like it's a pretty darn good knee. So in general, it'd be interesting to see, when someone who's active and has been using a polycentric knee, how they feel when they switch over to a single axis knee. Okay. So I'd love to see this person's feedback just to see what they say. But again, trial it. I mean, they're going to let you trial it, right? But it really will be, how you feel. I will tell you that when it comes time to engage the knee and bend the knee as you're swinging the knee out, that's going to feel different to you. That for sure will feel different than a polycentric knee. How the knee breaks is how we call it. Yeah. Does anybody else have any, has anybody here ever used, most people now, like a lot of people I know use single axis knees, especially if they're using a microprocessor knee. I think there's only the Alex is a polycentric microprocessor knee. And I think there is another one out there on the market that just came out. And of course, I am completely blanking out on what it is, but there's maybe one, maybe two polycentric microprocessor knees. So it's kind of cool to see someone. Does anybody here use a polycentric knee? Anybody here on the show tonight? Hey, happy Wednesday night to you. Legs are us. And it is an inherently safe design, and it is a fantastic knee. There we go. That sounds like someone who is a prosthetist right there. We got Mark Edwards and join on board. We got Smith coming in as well, Alice Scorpion, and we've got CPO Vivian Salazar. So welcome to all of my folks from Instagram jumping in as well. So let's see. Freedom Thrifter says, thanks. That was me. And yes, active at 56 years old. So Howard, I really, and I'm very sincere when I say this, guys, when you guys send me questions and you email me questions, I always answer back and I always tell you, please keep me posted. And I'm very, very sincere about that. Unfortunately, I don't have the luxury to be able to keep chasing everybody down to follow up what happened, and some of y'all leave me hanging. But please, I'd love to hear feedback whenever I answer your question, or if you find a solution or whatever. I always like to hear the feedback. And I like that they move to app adjustments. Yes. Basically all of these microprocessor knees have a Hoopy Scoopy app and you can make adjustments there. But again, the polycentric knee, it's really fun. And it's something that when I really didn't know a lot about it, I was very intimidated by polycentric knee because, again, it's like this geometric, all these sorts of bars and linkages and all this kind of instantaneous center of rotation, all this kind of crazy stuff. But the more I started learning about the physics and the mechanics behind the polycentric, I'm like, this is a really pretty cool piece of design here, mechanical design. And again, it can be the alignment. That's one thing that I'm the more I observe it and learn about it, the alignment is definitely key there. Okay. And sometimes I'll hear somebody say, I used a polycentric knee and I was falling down all over the place with that thing and it was a piece of garbage. And I'm like, okay, that probably means it wasn't aligned properly, because actually the polycentric knee can be a very safe design. And back before microprocessor knees came on the market, polycentrics were used a lot for our bilateral above the knee folks. Okay. So yeah, thank you, Howard. I appreciate that. So, kind of cool. All right, let's move on. Okay, so this question, I'm not joking. I got this question. I'm trying to figure out who's the smarty pants who texted me this question. Will my leg grow back? Shall we take a poll? Has anybody's leg grown back since amputation? Has anybody's leg grown back? Let's just take a quick COSI poll. Has anybody's leg grown back since? I can't keep a straight face. I saw this question and I'm just like, I know it's somebody who's pulling my leg here. Bad pun intended. And then the other one following this, and I don't know if these two people are buddies. The next text question I got was, what is the best joke you have heard from an amputee that let you know they have a positive and healthy mentality to handle their new normal. Um, so, it's one of those things where, and this kind of ties into another question that we have. This person texted me and said, oh, here, wait, you guys are saying stuff. Brenda says, no fertilizer for leg regrowth. Leanne is like thinking about it. Robert says 100% it will with metal and carbon fibers. Marianne says, I wish. Andre says, wait, they don't grow back. No, Andre, I hate to tell it to be the one to break it to you. G.I. Jen says, Miracle Grow, and I think it's working. You guys are awesome. Like I was seriously, guys, when I read this question on my text messages, I'm like, this is awesome. This is why I love what I do. This is wonderful. And then to closely follow that, with person asking what's my favorite joke, I'm not really much on I can't recall the jokes, but I love the shirts. I love amputee shirts. Like I love seeing what you guys come up with. I think my favorite, a couple of my favorite ones are like, it cost an arm and a leg, but I got 50% off. I got a good deal, or, something like that. Or, the other one is, this is what happens when you come home late and you don't have an explanation for your wife or something crazy like that. Or just the classic, you should see the other guy. Right. So I really love the shirts, and I love, especially when I go to an amputee convention, and I'm always the person just like kind of reading, everybody's shirts and things like that. Brenda says, you better get that Miracle Grow over here. Bill says, my workers' comp sent me to Michigan to one of their doctors to make sure my legs didn't grow back. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I believe you, Bill. I believe you. Apparently we were sending Social Security to people who were 140 plus years old. So I'm willing to believe anything at this point. Oh my gosh, that's insane. Okay. So, kind of tying into these questions about humor and how we handle, this trauma, this other person says, describe perseverance, determination, and faith. Why is it important to take care of your mental state as well? Do you have any ideas? I read daily on different support groups about people struggling, maybe tie it into a yoga type program. On another note, have you spoken with the Amputee Nation Conference? So yeah, guys, those of you who have, let's see, Robert says gingerbread man with the doctor asking, did he ice his leg? Okay. Okay. Serious. Okay. So guys, we've been doing this show now for 7 years, and, I'm a physical therapist. So obviously I deal with the physical side of recovery from amputation. But in doing so, I've had to learn a lot of psychology, and I've had to learn a lot about the healing process of amputation, of burn trauma, spinal cord injury, traumatic brain injury, stroke, all of these things. And if there's one thing I've learned over the years as a clinician, and then also from a personal standpoint, I am a breast cancer survivor, that healing from a trauma is physical, emotional, and spiritual. It really is. And when you are not taking care of all three, something's not going to go well. Okay. I don't have any studies, but I'm sure if you were to find, you can find some sort of sociological study or, anthropological study that states, people who ascribe to a faith and are practicing a faith, whether they are Muslim, Judeo-Christian, any of these faiths that we have in our world, and they are actively practicing it, they tend to lead healthier and happier lives. You can disagree with me if you like. That's fine. But in the 30 years that I've been working in healthcare, I find that statement to be very true. Okay. And then also from the emotional and the physical side of it. The physical side of it, obviously, we've beat that horse dead. We know we need the physical side of the recovery process and everything that's involved there, from the good surgery to the good prosthetist to the good physical therapist, occupational. You need all that, right? And then from the emotional side of things, you need that. It's one of those things where, my mentor, Paul, would say it so simply. And he said, you are a normal human reacting in a normal way to an abnormal situation, right? Amputation is not normal. Okay. Getting cancer is not normal. That's not the norm of the human experience, right? And our minds are not really necessarily equipped to handle that. Like, that's not what we were built for. Like, oh, someday we're going to have an amputation. Someday I'm going to get, no. So to have to handle that, you got to address the emotional side. And I think there's a variety of ways of doing that. You can do it through counseling sessions with a psychologist, psychiatrist. Some psychiatrists do offer counseling sessions, support groups, your family support. It can come from clergy. It can come from a social worker. Okay, there's so many ways to provide that emotional support. It's kind of like pick one. That's kind of what I tell sometimes with my patients who are struggling and they really don't want to get into that side. I said, look, pick something. Okay. And this person said about a yoga type program. I used to recommend yoga. I don't recommend yoga anymore. And that's more because of personal belief system of mine. But I do think there is something when it comes to the physical exercise of things. I personally love Pilates in that regard. I think that's my personal favorite substitute for yoga. And I actually think it's better than yoga. But having that, incorporated into your physical, it does contribute to your emotional well-being as well. And again, I want to hear you guys chiming in on this. In the meantime, I'm going to go read some of these shirt comments because I know that they're going to be good. Howard says, Scott's Miracle-Gro plant is 15 minutes from me going to load up. Marianne has a shirt that says, too cute for 2 legs. Oh, I love that. One's perfect for you, Marianne. Robert says, when my nurse asked my height and weight, I told her 160 pounds and 5'9", but now down a foot. Brenda says, exactly. I did state that at the bottom of the Medicare reevaluation. If you know how to grow them back, please share. Bet you that got someone's attention. Scott says, when someone comments liking my leg, I say thanks, but I like the original better. Most of us are afraid to say a thing. And guys, I think for sure that's probably been I did the whole 30 days of live shows in April a couple of years back. And I think my favorite one was when I just said, what is the funniest thing? How do you guys respond to people's comments if they ask you how you lost your leg, especially with the kids? So we're going to have one of those nights this month. So I want you guys to save these comments for those time as well. Emily says, I have a shirt that says 1 foot in the grave and another that says surviving purely out of spite. I need to buy more. Oh. G.I. Jane says, ask me about mental toughness. Go Army Airborne. Hooah. There you go. Jerry Ann says, what are you looking at, you 2-legged freak? Yeah, I've seen that one a lot. Let's see. Emily says, I'd be in sad shape without my faith. My dad was a pastor and my therapist, and my journey has been harder mentally on me. Yeah. Let's see. Ben Gregory says, I think a positive emotional mental state helps me integrate into society more easily. And you definitely embody that for sure, Ben Gregory. Melissa says, my son was so excited for the first Thanksgiving after the loss of my leg so he could ask, Mom, would you like a leg? Then to top that, 2 years later, after I lost my second leg and had a mastectomy, he said, Mom, would you like a leg or a breast? Well, as a fellow breast cancer survivor, Melissa, I'm gonna have to think of that one for next Thanksgiving as well. Jerry Ann is asking, am I going to write a therapy book for bilaterals? It is on my to-do list, Jerry Ann. And I'll be really super honest, guys. I financed. So I wrote 2 books, an above the knee book and a below the knee book. And I also created the entire video series that goes with these books. It's 150 exercise videos for above the knee and below the knee amputees, head to toe fitness. And I financed the whole thing and launched it 3 years ago. And I always tell people, I'll be honest, the reason why I don't have one for bilaterals or upper extremity is because I ran out of money, because it's expensive to make these videos and to publish these books. So I'm pretty open with saying it, but it's one of those things that, one of my goals, Jerry Ann, is to be able to obtain the resources, money, to be able to then expand this program. So that's something that I have been actively working on for the past 3 years. So you guys will be the first to know if and when it happens. We're going to think positively. Let's see. Grant says amputee some assembly required. There was one, like an IKEA one, and I forgot what it said, but it was funny. It was like something like pieces left over and it had like a toe or something left. It was really funny. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, let's see what else we got. We got on, okay, going back to these questions. So Scott says 2 PT practices refuse to take me as a patient due to my size. Crazy, right? I'm sorry to hear that, Scott. That breaks my heart. I've had probably in the 7 years that I've opened my practice, I've had 2 patients that were over 400 pounds. And it's something like prior to opening my practice, when I worked in hospitals, I had quite a bit of experience working with folks over the 400-pound mark. And obviously when you're working in a hospital setting, you have the tools and some of the equipment that's necessary to work with folks. It is in an outpatient setting. It is challenging. The 2 clinics that I was working at did not have the equipment that I needed to really be able to progress one of my patients. He was very, very deconditioned. We did the best that we could. We really tried hard, and he worked really, really hard, and we were able to progress him a little bit. But definitely it's one of those things where I've always said, I was like, yeah, I need to find a clinic that has the equipment available to work with patients of a larger size. But there's still things that can be done. Okay. So, again, when I first worked as a physical therapist, there was no equipment 25 years ago when I started working as a PT. There was no equipment for folks over 400 pounds. That was something that was developed a few years later. So again, it's you had to get creative, and you always had to be safe. So the only thing I can think of is for those particular PT clinics, if they don't have the facility that is set up, and in which case it's something that they should take into consideration. For me, I don't own my own brick and mortar clinic. I have my own practice, but I work out of prosthetist clinics. So I'm kind of at the mercy of what the prosthetist has available in their clinic. But again, that is something that there's going to be, there has to be a clinic in your area that is equipped. There has to be. Yeah. All right, let's see. Oh, here's one. This one says, here's one from our chats. Will having an osseointegration PT professional help me with my walking make a noticeable improvement? Let me know, please. And then, as always, thank you so much for being you. Thank you. Yes. Anybody who is missing a leg, maybe that should be my shirt, guys. Right? Like, we need to come up with something clever for me to wear as a physical therapist, amputee specialist, something that says, missing a limb, yeah, you need the PT. Like, we need to come up with, I'm not very good at coming up with clever sayings, but we need to come up with a clever shirt that I can wear, because I need a t-shirt. I need to wear a t-shirt. So yes, guys, anytime there's a limb missing, you need to have physical therapy. Okay. And y'all know my soapbox on this one. I'll get all hot and bothered about this one. Because even to this day, I still have people, clinicians, not just folks who are not in healthcare, clinicians who will say, why does that person need to go to physical therapy? They put their prosthetic on and they're walking. And here, the best answer I've gotten to them, and when I say they, I mean the occasional prosthetist, the occasional surgeon, not the ones that have been on my show. Okay. Those are amazing surgeons. They know, they love their PTs and they know them. But occasionally I will run into a surgeon or a prosthetist who will say that. And they truly. And so my response to them lately has been, if a person tears their ACL, like a soccer player, if Messi tears his ACL, right, and he goes to have it surgically repaired, do you think he needs physical therapy? Well, yeah, of course he does. Okay. If someone messes up their rotator cuff and they get it put back together again, do you think they need physical therapy? Yeah, of course they need physical therapy. I send them to physical therapy. Okay. Someone has their limb removed and they don't need PT. And then I just stop and I let the crickets chirp. Right? So, but yes, physical therapy, it's the rehabilitation process. And this goes whether you are an amputee using a traditional socket, and most certainly if you are having osseointegration, OI done. Okay. And we've done numerous shows. So I would encourage you, please go to my YouTube channel, look at the shows I've done with Integrum. They're the makers of the Oprah OI system specifically. Okay. First of all, there's very strict protocols in terms of the weight bearing, how the weight bearing is progressed. With the process, the healing process. And then certainly once you get into the gait mechanics again, yes, I mean, it's what we do, guys. I'm currently editing a 13-hour course that I'm giving to physical therapists on amputee care. 13 hours. And I'm having to edit it down to 13 hours. All right. It started off, it's like a beast of a course that I've created. It's a 2-day course. Okay. So, and I'm just scratching the surface with a 13-hour course on everything that can be done for the amputee. Okay. To get them mobile, to get them walking well, to get them active again. So yes, working with a physical therapist who understands OI, who specializes in amputee care will most definitely improve your walking. Absolutely. Let's see. Howard says, nice hanging out with you tonight. I have to sign off. I have to get up at 4:30 in the morning. Bless your heart. So Howard, looking forward to it. Thank you for joining us this evening, and hopefully we will see you again next week. Robert says, I have the best PTs and they became my friends and they often check on me to see how I am doing. I love it. And I will say, guys, one of the things I love most about having my practice and having my own practice that's amputee specific for the past 7 years. Number one, I get to be my own boss, which is good and bad at times, right? But I love getting to know my patients. Prior to open up my practice, I worked home health for several years and I've worked in hospitals and things like that. And I truly enjoy having that relationship with my patient and just getting to know them as an individual and getting to know more about their lives. And I feel like, with my current practice setup, I really get a chance to really get to know my patients well. And hopefully you guys see that in some of the videos I post with my patients where we're having a good time. Me too. So it's interesting. It was something that creating a CEU course was never on my radar because it is a buttload of work. I'm not going to lie. It is a ton of work to put that together. But it has been incredibly rewarding and I'm so excited. I'm scheduled to give this lecture at least 3 times this year, potentially 2 more. So it's growing. Okay. This one is another one that came in regarding OI. It says, question for the Oprah OI users. Glenn, if you're still on board, listen up. This one says, I am a mixed bilateral. So this person is above the knee on one side, below the knee on the other, just finished stage 1. So this person just had the fixture implanted and it's closed and it's waiting and healing and getting that bone fusion. Do you wear your leg or legs into the shower? Okay, so this is a very good question. We did a lot of talk about the skincare side of things of OI and the talk that we did. When was it, Glenn? Like 4 weeks ago? Very recently. Okay, so you can go to the YouTube channel and you can watch the show. And it was with Dr. Forsberg, and he gave, how he instructs his patients on taking care of their skin. And then Glenn was on there talking also about his daily skin care. So when it comes to taking a shower with it, yes, you can take a shower, but it's dependent more on what's your prosthesis. Okay, so my girl G.I. Jane right there. It's more dependent on the prosthetic knee. Okay, if your prosthetic knee is waterproof, then technically you can take it in the shower. I know that most amputees opt to not put it in the shower because, again, even though it's waterproof, a lot of people are just like, it's a very expensive knee, not sure if we want to take that in the shower and risk it, any kind of a risk. When it comes to the skin hygiene part of it, I would imagine that it's easier to clean because you have to clean the aperture site every day. It has to be cleaned and there's the cleaning protocol. So I can only imagine it's a lot easier to clean when the prosthesis is not connected to it. So it's more of a mechanical reason than it is like a contraindicated reason. Right. So if you have the Genium X3, theoretically, that can go into the water and into the shower. Okay. So again, Glenn, if you're on board, I'd love to hear your input on this, but I know so Slim Ginny on Instagram, she often posts pictures of how she does her showers and she gets in the shower, takes her leg off, puts it outside the shower, does her hygiene, dries off, and then she puts her leg back on. So again, I think it's more of the purpose of being able to clean properly that site. And you're going to have a much better job of doing that if you're sitting down and, cleaning it properly. Okay. Yeah, versus a shower bench. No, and I would recommend definitely using the shower bench. To each their own. Everybody has their way of doing things, but I think it's just safer, number one. And you don't want to have a fall in the shower, period, and certainly not when you have OI. We don't want that. And again, you can just have a better view and angle of what's going on at that exit site and be able to do the cleaning properly. Okay. Oh, here was one, because I had a little bit of like a moment on this particular question. Not the question itself, but like somebody responded to the question, and yeah. And I just have to kind of comment on it. Okay. So this particular person last night, I didn't get to their question, and they asked, how do I take care of bone spurs? I can't wear my prosthetic. Okay. Oh, thank you, Glenn. Oh, thank you for chiming in with that. So the Axor, I stand corrected, guys. The Axor is not waterproof. I have the X3 as well, and sometimes cover the Axor with a Ziploc. Thank you, Glenn, for bringing that to my attention. Okay, so there you have it, guys. The Axor itself is not waterproof. Glenn, if you don't mind giving your commentary on this one, do you find it's easier to clean the aperture site without having the leg on, when you're doing shower and hygiene? Or not necessarily. So when it comes to bone spurs, guys, basically it's like a bone blister, if you think about it. Okay. It's basically because there's some sort of shearing or friction going on in the bone itself. Okay. And it's still kind of a mystery, like who's going to get a bone spur, who's not going to get a bone spur. We know that traumatic amputations tend to be more prone to getting what's called heterotopic ossification, which is bone formation in the muscle itself. The bone spur is just a little spur-like formation that grows out of the bone. Okay. So when these happen, obviously they can be very painful, because then the person is trying to put weight into the prosthesis, and that bone spur is digging into that soft tissue. And guys, I've seen some really gnarly looking bone spurs that are just like claws when you see them on the X-ray, and they're just like claws coming out. I even had one particular individual that his actually created a wound out. Like he had a wound on the outside that wasn't healing. And it turned out it was because he had a bone spur that was poking through. So these can be pretty dramatic. And if they are in the wrong spot, it can make wearing a prosthesis very uncomfortable. Okay. When it comes to the management of bone spurs, and again, it's not just amputees. Anybody can get a bone spur, right? Some people will get them in their heels and, what have you. When it comes to the treatment, it's about controlling the inflammation, because that's what causes the pain around the bone spur. So there's different ways of controlling that inflammation with different treatments. But as far as actually getting rid of the bone spur, the only way to get rid of the bone spur is to surgically remove it. Okay. And in some extreme cases, that has to be done. So for example, the person I was telling you about, where their bone spur was actually causing a wound, that person had to get that bone spur removed. I mean, that was just like, yes, it must be done. Okay. And then there's always the small risk that the bone spur can grow back. Okay. But when you have an extreme case where it's preventing you from being able to use your prosthesis, or it's causing a wound, or it's impacting the quality of life, then it certainly warrants a discussion with the surgeon. Okay. So getting back to the particular comment, and then someone responded to this comment. And I know that this person was well-intentioned, but I do need to comment on it because it was on my show. So the person said, use this calcium supplement and ultrasound. Okay, here's the deal. When it comes to ultrasound is used to diagnose the bone spur. So I don't know if, and the person said, go see the chiropractor so that they can give you this particular calcium supplement and ultrasound. So ultrasound is used for two things. Okay. It's used to diagnose the bone spur. It's a certain one kind of ultrasound machine. And then a different kind of ultrasound machine can be used to treat inflammation in the soft tissues. Okay. And, when I looked at some of the studies are kind of like a little inconclusive as to whether ultrasound therapy really helps with treating the inflammation around a bone spur. It's like, yeah, so, and again, it's a lot of it is anecdotal. Some people say it did work. Some people say it didn't, whatever. So, this individual meant well, and I'm sure they wanted to provide help and assistance. But again, it's just a reminder, guys, if you need to be careful what you read on the internet kind of thing, and people offering their advice. The other thing is then saying about, taking the calcium, whatever calcium supplement there. Okay. When it comes to supplements, and this is something that I'm becoming a bit more vocal about, okay, you got to be careful, guys. You got to be careful. I am all for treating things naturally. I am actually a huge proponent of functional nutrition, functional medicine, and we're starting to see a lot more of that come out of the woodwork, okay? Using more natural, holistic methods for healing various ailments in conjunction with traditional medicine. I am all for it. But like everything else, it needs to be done responsibly, okay? And one of the first things you have to understand is when it comes to these supplements, first of all, they're not FDA regulated, okay? And I know the FDA is not perfect and a lot of crazy stuff happens with the FDA, but truly when it comes to supplements, it's kind of the wild, wild west. Anybody can hang a shingle and put out a product and call it a supplement. Okay. So things that they put into these supplements, I mean, honestly, it's the wild, wild west. Okay. So the other thing is a lot of these supplements, they can make and pack a punch. They can pack a punch. Okay. A lot of people think that's because they don't require a prescription, or you can get them over the counter, or you can order them online. Just pop them and your body will get rid of whatever it doesn't need. No, guys, some of these supplements are really, really strong. I myself have my own supplements that I take. And whenever I am being given a supplement by my functional nutritionist, right, I have to take it to my oncologist to make sure it's not interfering with any of those medications, because some of these supplements are very strong. And some of these supplements, as a breast cancer survivor, are off limits to me, completely off limits to me. Okay. So when someone just randomly says, just go to the chiropractor, or just take this supplement. No. And yes, there is evidence to support the value of taking calcium, the value of taking vitamin D in conjunction with potassium to help with bone turnover and resorption, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, there is something to that, but it is very different per individual. Okay. And as of now, there is no literature right now. There is no studies that show that these actively will help resolve a bone spur. It will contribute to bone health, but not necessarily resolve a bone spur. Okay, I have yet to find any evidence of that. If anybody here has any of that evidence, I'd be willing to be proven wrong on that. So I'd be very wary if there's a chiropractor saying, we can help you get rid of your bone spur with supplementation. I'd be very curious, number one, to see what is their literature behind that, but a little on the suspicious side. So again, I know this person who wrote this comment was trying to be helpful, but I see this a lot on social media and it drives me bonkers because I'm like, folks, please understand. You gotta find credible sources for these things. Okay. Yeah. Robert says consistency is way off on some supplements, so I went away from them. And guys, again, this is something that I've really come around to in the past few years and taking a look at the holistic side of some of these practices. And I do see there is value there. Unfortunately, we have some studies, but we don't have a lot of studies yet. So when you are thinking of taking supplements and when you're thinking of doing these things, you need to be responsible about it. And you need to go to someone who is licensed, whether it's a licensed dietitian, a licensed functional medicine practitioner, someone who is licensed, who has received specialized training, someone who understands your medical history. Okay. And preferably someone who will work with your doctor. Okay. That kind of all, needs to come into play. So Jean says, thank you for some common sense about supplements. Yeah. And again, guys, you don't know what you don't know. So, sometimes somebody out there needs to hear me get on my soapbox tonight. Okay. Let's see. I do have an announcement. Click Medical this month, guys, and this is why I love working. One of the reasons I love working with Click Medical and my sponsors. They are going to be doing a 30-day giveaway. 30-day giveaway. So obviously in honor of Limb Loss Awareness Month, they are going to be giving away a free subscription to the COSI Talks video exercise program. Okay. So they're going to be giving away 30 subscriptions total this month. And then they're going to be giving away 1 book per week. So a lot of you have already kind of like signed up and done the social media giveaway thing. So if you guys haven't done so, keep your eyes on Facebook and Instagram, Click Medical, and keep an eye on mine as well, because I'll be posting all of their giveaway stuff. So good stuff. Earl says, did you get my question about fractures and infections earlier? I did not. Please repost it right now. Please repost it. So this person, I think it was Scott. Scott said, I think the new number of people living with limb loss in the United States is 5.7 million. And it's like, yeah, it is. So interestingly, it's been a year. So February of 2024, the Amputee Coalition teamed up with an organization that does research studies. I forgot the name of it, right? And they updated the statistics on how many amputees are living in the US. So prior to this, we were basing it on the numbers of 2.1 million amputees living in the US. And that number was corrected to 5.7 million. 5.7 million amputees living in the US. That, however, does not even take into account the amputees that are being cared for by the VA system. Okay. And it does not account for the people who are uninsured. Okay. So we know that 5.7 million is not high enough, unfortunately. Not high enough. And yes, 80% are lower extremity. I have some number. It depends on the literature you look at, but yeah, the majority are lower extremity. Mm-hmm. Earl, put your question in about your fractures and infections. Let me hear that question. Hey, there's so many good questions here, guys. And guys, by the way, if you sent me your question on text message and I do not get to it tonight, I will get to it at some point this month. Because again, there's just so many good questions. And guys, here's one thing. This is kind of one of my goals for this month. I am really trying to grow my texting service. It is probably becoming my most effective way of communicating with folks. It's great because you guys get to send me your questions directly. It also allows me to send you the links to my show whenever I go live. So please, if you have not already signed up for my texting service, you can do so by, oh gosh, I did not even put the right thing in there. Oh, good grief, COSI. COSI Talks. So text COSI Talks, not COSI Texts. COSI Talks to 855. I need a secretary. Don't I wish? Okay. COSI Talks to that number. So guys, if you haven't already signed up for my texting service, please consider doing so. Share it out to your support groups. Again, you can text me directly. You will get the links to my live show. I don't send out a bunch of mindless spam. Any text message I send, it's a purposefully sent message. Okay. So there you have it. All right. Earl, where are you, buddy? Oh, there we go. So he said, I had a tibia fracture and caused my amputation. Is that, oh yes, you had the tibial plateau fracture. Yes. So let's talk about that. Okay. So quick anatomy lesson. And this is not, Bob doesn't have much of a tibial plateau. Okay. So here's your tibia, right? Your shin bone. And then it connects to the femur, right? So this part at the top of the tibia, that part right there where the femur is sitting right on top, that's called the tibial plateau. And it's called that because it's a plateau. It's very flat, okay? When you fracture, when you specifically get a fracture on the tibial plateau, number one, it is exquisitely painful. It is exquisitely painful. It's also kind of a dicey fracture. It's not a great fracture to have. And I saw a lot of these more in my days in the trauma center. And the reason being is because it's not surgically is a challenge to take care of. And then during the healing process, it's not going to have as good circulation as this part of the bone to heal. Okay. So it's going to be a little bit dicier when it comes to circulation. And when it comes to circulation and fracture healing, you need good circulation. Okay. You need really good circulation going to the bone because that's what's going to feed the bone and get it to heal. Okay. On top of things, right? When you break a bone, depending on the bone, depending on the fracture, the surgeon or the doctor will tell you, okay, you can now start to put a little bit of weight on it. Now you can put a little bit more weight. And a few weeks later, okay, you can put half of your weight into it. Okay, now so it's a progressive weight bearing process to heal a fractured bone. And every bone is a little different, right? The tibial plateau is very strict. You cannot put any weight into that. Okay. And if you think about it, when you're putting weight into a bone that's trying to heal, right, you're basically breaking it apart every time. And you're jiggling that fracture site. And you're also compromising the circulation that is trying to get to that fracture site. Okay. So if somebody has a tibial plateau fracture and they're accidentally putting weight into it, that can lead to the bone necrosing, dying. The bone dies. Okay. So again, it's been a minute since I worked with tibial plateau fractures, and it was a lot during my days of working in the trauma centers. But that was the biggest risk with these tibial plateau fractures. And the thing that happens is sometimes people will start to feel better. They don't have like the intense pain, like the pain starts to go away. Okay. And they get a little overconfident and they'll put a little too much weight into it, even if the doctor told them they're not ready to put weight into it yet. So those were the problems that I would see. So the susceptibility to infection, and again, depending on also what caused that tibial plateau fracture. If it was a lot of the tibial plateau fractures I saw were really horrible car accidents or a person getting hit by a car, something very, very traumatic. So there was a lot that was introduced into the area of injury. Okay, that could potentially cause infection. Okay. So is it common? I mean, I compared to diabetes and compared to motorcycle accidents, no, but it's certainly a very plausible cause for it. I can see where a tibial plateau fracture, if it's not been healed properly and that bone starts to necrose and starts to die, that can lead to eventually an amputation, down the line. My pleasure, Harsh. Thank you guys for being here. Okay. Whew, so you tripped and fell. Okay. So, I mean, again, I'm playing Monday morning quarterback with this, but that's the only thing I can think of. And again, with any fracture, it always carries a risk for infection. Always. There's always a risk somewhere in there for infection. So, yeah. Okay, I think I got all the questions I'm going to be able to handle tonight. Like I said, there's a handful of questions here that you guys texted me, but it's down. And like I tell my kids, once it's written down on my calendar, it will get done. So I will be certain to address these questions over the next few days of this month. So guys, again, I would really, truly appreciate the support this month. Please, if you're not already doing so, follow me on Instagram. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow me on Facebook. I know I'm asking a lot, but if you can just even do one of those things, that would be really helpful. And then, like I said, every night, this month, I will be going live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. And I'm going to answer one question. It's going to be really, really hard just to answer one question, but it's going to be one question and I'm going to make it good. So share it out to your support groups and That's it. Okay, so guys, next week, remember, I am going to be with Click Medical. They are coming into the studio. We're going to be talking about everything that Click Medical can do for you as an upper extremity or lower extremity amputee. Those of you who are on my email address system, you're going to see information about giveaways. And if you're not on my email subscription list, then what are you waiting for? You can go to my website, www.cositalks.com, and get subscribed there. Okay, I am talked out. I have to go now and keep working on this pink prom dress. Maybe I'll post a picture if it's not completely disastrous. And get ready for my day tomorrow. All right, guys, as always, thank you again for letting me be a part of your lives this evening. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. God bless.